Live pigeon guns. First question, what is a live pigeon gun?
Live pigeon guns, they tend to be bigger and stronger than your standard side lock or box lock. They were built to take large loads through tight chokes and to kill pigeons before they escape the boundary rope in a live pigeon ring on a live pigeon match. They were popular up until around about the 1920s, when it sort of faded out of fashion. Live pigeon shooting was in the Olympics at the turn of the century. But these days, we don't see it anymore. You still see it practiced sometimes in Spain, parts of North America, some parts of Mexico. The Portuguese ceased their live pigeon shooting last year, I understand. But back in its day, huge fortunes were wagered and lost and won on the back of live pigeon matches and performances.
It's very similar to trap shooting.
It is these days, yeah. I mean, it was the precursor to what we now know as trap shooting, clay shooting, ZZ Hellis, and all the clay shooting that we have. The guns themselves, as I said, they were built strong. So you're talking about long barrel guns, 30, 32 inch typically, longer chambers, 2 3/4, 3 inch, but there are no hard and fast rules here. They vary between different manufacturers. They also tend to have wide file cut ribs as well. So a nice wide sighting plane to draw your eye down towards the pigeon. They tend to have pistol grips, but not always. They sometimes have treble grip actions, but not always. They sometimes have side clips, but not always. So they do vary in styles, but lots of the main gun makers of the turn of the century, you're talking about a clientele here who were aristocratic with deep pockets, because they were the sort of people who would wager £250,000 in today's money on a match in a live pigeon ring. That's the kind of winnings and losings that went on. Huge fortunes were wagered. Yeah, big money. So the gun makers took note of what their aristocratic, deep-pocketed clients wanted, and they would come along and be very specific. So here you've got very heavily carved fence or detonators, but also a much wider action than you see. We've got 2 live pigeon purdies here. One is significantly heavier in the action than the other.
Yeah.
It's wider, sleeker. It's sleek, that's sleeker, that's stronger. So they were bespoke orders, and the clients were saying, I want this, I want that, I don't want this, I don't want that.
Because it might help me hit that one.
Exactly. And the one pigeon escaping can mean the difference between winning and losing a very large purse.
So I presume was it the aristocrats shooting, or do they have men?
No.
They have professional sportsmen?
They tended to be from the wealthier parts of society at the turn of the century. Yes, it was some aristocrats. There was some professional gentlemen who didn't need to work because they made their money in the pigeon ring.
Yeah, travelling the world.
Yeah.
Shooting
Not
pigeons.
necessarily travelling the world. I mean, Monte Carlo had a big pigeon ring up until the 30s.
Yeah, we're travelling Europe.
Yeah, exactly, travelling Europe. But it goes back to, I mean, the origins of it go back to the mid-18th century when they were live pigeon match with flintlocks. So it had been around a long time before they developed these guns, but not every gun you see with a treble grip action, with long chambers, tight chokes, long barrels and a raised file cut rib is a live pigeon gun.
Okay.
So the main difference between the two, because we've got a selection of guns here, some of which are live pigeon guns, some of which are not, some of which are crossovers.
So these 2 purdies are live pigeon guns?
They are live pigeon guns. They are
Built
in the record as built as live pigeon guns. That one's a 3-inch chamber, that one isn't. But here we have a Croccarda Perth box lock ejector, which it doesn't have side clips, it does have a treble grip action, long barrels, tight chokes, long chamber, but it's too refined to be designed to wallow around in the foreshore.
So a wild fowling or a fowling gun and a live pigeon gun have
very similar properties. So this is my competition clay gun here, which is what I go clay shooting with. It has a wide file cut rib, treble grip action, side clips, 3-inch chambers. It's a wildfowler. It's not a live pigeon gun. That is because I can't afford a live pigeon gun. But essentially it's doing the same thing that we want from our clay guns. It's controlling muzzle flip. It's giving you a single sighting plane, even though you've got a side-by-side rib. Yep. It's as close as you can get to an over and under, but in a side-by-side. Okay. So it performs a very similar role. This is a box lock ejecting Churchill with a file cut rib and a treble grip action, but it's a nicely finished, well-made gun of quality, but it is not a live pigeon gun. It happens to have a wider file cut rib. That's simply because the client specified, I want a file cut
So
rib.
unlike a little bit like we see today with the Top Boys, a lot of the features of their guns we pull into the everyday sporter.
Exactly, and you see this was the big competition circuit, things that they were experimenting with here. Some of them are non-auto safety, some of them are automatic safety. Single trigger mechanisms were developed for getting a second shot off quick to prevent that pigeon escaping. It's very similar to you see the developments in Formula One trickling down into the motor manufacturing industry. It's that kind of research and development up here for high-level competition trickles down to everywhere else once they've perfected the idea or the new patent.
So at what point did fowling guns and pigeon guns sort of grow together to be what they are as we've got on the table, or did fowling guns take a hint from live pigeon guns, or was it the other way around?
I think it's possible that as the Hurlingen Club in the 1850s, 60s and 70s made live pigeon shooting popular in the UK, they started to look around to see how they could best deliver a large payload of pellets that were killing at range. And the people who were doing that were the market gunners on the foreshore around the coast of the UK, who were ordering, especially the gentleman gunners as well, who were ordering wildfowling guns, and the similar properties were then adopted by the live pigeon shooters. It was probably running in parallel. The fowlers were asking for specific things that I think were then also co-opted by live pigeon, and then the live pigeon guns developed.
Take it to the extreme.
Yeah, take it to the extreme.
Because they've got the cash.
Develop expensive patents for
They're not
other
getting
things.
half a penny for a duck. They've got £250,000 in the bank for...
Exactly, and they wanted better finishing and higher spec engraving and all of the things that go with a very, very expensive gun.
Like Formula One. You don't see them waltzing around in white suits.
No, exactly. So they run in parallel, but there is a gulf in class between them, a gulf in quality.
And that's finish quality or just overall quality?
Probably finish more than anything else. I mean, they were made, the guys making wildfowling guns, in the 1890s and 1880s, they were making really, really good guns. These are not skimped on. It's just the quality of barrels being, the barrels were not struck down and finished and blacked as perfection, to perfection, because you're in a saltwater environment. You just need it to last and be thick and strong, especially when you're home loading and, you might have had one too many sherbets in the pub and, all of a sudden you double your load, you need it to last. So...
personal experience there?
No, don't home load. Life is too short, I have to say, particularly with some of the quality of stuff on the market you can buy. So I don't need to. But it does essentially come down to the quality of exterior finish, not necessarily the quality of make of gun, depending on the make you're talking about.
Where do they fit in nowadays?
They are very, very popular these days. People, we've tended to move towards higher and higher birds, longer barrels, bigger loads, but there are some people who don't like the thought of shooting an over and under, but do want to tackle that kind of bird with that kind of equipment. And so a live pigeon gun is really the best option for them. Yeah. So
half a pound heavier than a standard side-by-side.
Yeah. But with all the finesse and the elegance and class of a side-by-side, but with the ability to deliver a big punch downrange.
How do you tell if you've got one? Let's say I go into some provincial gun shop and there's a gun on the shelf that looks like a pigeon gun.
Yep.
And I just buy it.
Yep.
Because it's nice. How do you know whether that is a fowling gun, a live pigeon gun, or a nothing something?
If it is made by one of the big London names, then it conforms to long chambers, long barrels, tight chokes, raised matte file cut rib, it's likely to be in the records. So you'll be able to phone up Holland or James Purdy and Sons and say, I have acquired this, lucky you. Here's the serial number. Can you tell me whether this was made of a live pigeon gun or not? And it will say in the records if the gun is still original, and then you can find out that way. The chances are it's already been spotted because they can be quite easy to pick out. They tend to be very, very high quality guns, very well finished, very highly engraved.
So you're not likely to make the mistake?
No, you can see the gulf in class between that and that.
Yes.
And it doesn't take a stretch to know that that level of carving, of engraving on the detonator there and the plainness of the beader border engraving there means that has had significantly more time, effort and money poured into it than that.
They were hammer guns. They were flintlocks.
Yeah.
Then they were hammer guns.
Yep.
And then they were side locks.
Or they were percussion as well, between
percussion,
the
okay,
flintlock and the hammer.
Were they ever box locks?
Yes, they were. There are some box lock live pigeon guns which were built as live pigeon guns. Yeah, they are around.
That doesn't really conform to the quality, or is that me just...
Yes and no. Some, as we move on in the in the 1910s, 1920s, with the change in agricultural income, some people may have wanted to carry on with a live pigeon competition, but haven't necessarily got the farming funds to back it up.
Yeah.
And therefore, when they came to order a new gun, said, yeah, actually, I'll compromise on the spend a little bit and go for a box lock. So they do exist.
I want all of the specs, but I'll have a box lock.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Interesting.
mean, essentially, yes, these are very, very well made and hugely long lasting, as we've discussed with English side locks. But the hammer in an Ansel and Dealey box lock is a big, strong piece of metal.
Yes, it will repeat and repeat and
You
repeat.
have to work really hard to break a firing pin.
Yeah,
on an
I'm
Ansel and
presuming
Dealey
the
box lock.
farmers 100 years ago are the same as some of the farmers I know now.
Yeah, exactly.
They could probably break it very easily.
Well, yes.
With
I mean,
that dose of
if
luck
you
that they were
mistreat
born
it,
with, yes.
but you don't want that happening in competition.
No.
Which is why Krieghoffs are very, very popular at high-level competition now. Is because they're very, very hard to break.
Yes.
As long as you look after them.
Yeah, and they do conform to similar standards.
Yeah.
Which is an issue because the way you describe it, if we had a table full of over and unders, it would be exactly the same.
Yeah.
As a competition grade gun, it's the same sort of concept.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the prize money has dropped.
Disappeared. Yes. I mean, it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be nice to change that. Yes.
Yeah. Could be a professional pigeon shooter or a professional pigeon shooter. So, would you go live pigeon shooting?
It would be interesting to try it as an exercise because it's not easy. For those who've done it, tell me this is not an easy exercise. I've shot Hellis, which is its inanimate
Yes. It's plastic
equivalent,
and clay, brother.
and separating that disc from the wing, the blade, as it spins away from you, is very hard to do. You have to really smack it to separate inside the boundary rope, which I don't know if anybody who doesn't understand live pigeon shooting, you have to kill the bird before it escapes beyond a particular boundary rope. If it's outside that, and if it dies outside that, you didn't get a point, and you lost that particular point, or your run of shooting came to an end. Same with ZZ Hellis as well, and that is fun and difficult and challenging to do. It doesn't quite conform to my idea of fair chase, but so I would probably, as I get older, it would be an interesting exercise to try once. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Would you buy a live pigeon gun?
Yes, absolutely.
Would you prefer a live pigeon gun to other guns? Is that like
For clay shooting, yes.
Okay, for game
Yeah.
shooting?
In the same way that longer barrels, tighter choke, well, when we're talking about lead anyway, control muzzle flip allow you to get a more accurate shot at distance and a more even, smooth swing than a short barrel gun, lightweight, light chokes. I would absolutely shoot my clay gun for very, very high pheasants. That's what I would take.
Okay. But as an all-rounder, you would say a side-by-side
Yeah.
side is more
For normal game shooting, it's too tightly choked.
Okay.
That's nearly full in the left barrel. That's too tight for the most of the game shooting I do, to be honest with you. It's not going to do. The ultimate aim is to put something on the table and you don't want a dirty great hole in it. So, yeah, that's why I take a nice open choked hammer gun for normal ranges. But I've shot roosting pigeons with this gun way, way above the treetops, and that's good fun to shoot. But it is mostly designed for me to obliterate clays.
Okay. Money. They're expensive, generally speaking.
Yes.
Where does the market start? Where does it go to?
Again, as always, it comes down to condition. Condition of the barrels particularly. This one is in very, very good condition. So you're looking at £25,000
By one
as
of
an
the finest
estimate.
gun makers in the world.
Absolutely.
as
James
well.
Purdy and Sons is going to be in the tens of thousands, as is that, with two sets of barrels. As you come down a bit into, because they tend to have been used a lot,
Like a trap gun.
like a trap gun, and depending on how well they were looked after and how regularly they were serviced by the makers, it depends on how much residual value is still in it. So original condition, in good condition, worth more than rebarreled by, and
Obviously.
yeah, so that does matter. But you can pick up equivalent guns, as we've said, the wildfowlers and live pigeon guns are not very far apart in actual spec.
And shootability.
In shootability and spec and the qualities you get from them. It's just down to the finish.
Okay.
So you can pick up that, for example, for around about £300-400.
Yes. A sleeved thing.
Yeah, a sleeve fowler.
Yeah, be perfect.
Is not going to be of huge interest to anybody except the particular types like me who like shooting clays with one.
$3,000, $4,000 starting price on
Yeah,
those pigeon
you
guns?
could find something. Yeah, it may need a bit of work, but you could find something.
So they are they're valued.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen how the move away from lead shot will affect the live pigeon gun market. For the last 20 years, they have been very, very popular because people have moved towards 32, 34 gram loads for pheasant shooting. These guys will take it and be comfortable for you to do that.
And if you're coming off the back of an over and under and want to dabble in the side-by-side market,
your transition is going to be easier. Exactly. So, but as we move towards high-performance steel being an absolute requirement, then you're going to need that extra weight of a heavier over and under to absorb the recoil, because even through heavier side-by-sides, there will be a limit as to what you can take recoil-wise, because it's a thumpier experience to shoot really high-performance steel
some people
cartridges.
do like that.
Well, if you're that kind of masochist, then fine, if that's your thing.
Don't touch.
I'm not going to judge. Each to their own.
Yes. So yes, the market may change in the future.
It might. We'll see.
We're in sacrilege to open the chokes up?
Well, once you've taken it out, you can't put it back. It's basic law of carpentry, isn't it? So once it's gone, it's gone.
Okay.
And is it sacrilege? Again, I mean, these things are functional items. So if you want to ease the choke, and I've considered easing the choke in the left barrel of mine, fine. But then that's not, this has already been sleeved. So arguably,
you're not.
I'm not damaging anybody's pride and joy there.
Well, it's your pride
and it's my pride and joy anyway. So
you're allowed to do whatever you like.
I can do what I find. Yeah, exactly. And whatever you want to do to it is absolutely fine. So yeah, alter the chokes to your style of shooting. That's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, you've got to be comfortable with what you're shooting. And
this is totally unrelated.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, does altering the chokes, is that bad?
It doesn't ruin value. It can affect value in that with original tight choke there, the new customer can alter it to what he wants.
Okay.
So, but I mean, there is an argument to be said. I wouldn't recommend doing this on a single trigger Boss with original condition from 1910, but send it to Nigel Teague and get him to Teague it for you. Yes. So you've got, more options.
If it's a user's gun, then you should probably get it to a state that you can use it.
If it's a collector's gun, don't ever do that, because you will slash the originality.
Unless you're the same masochist as we were talking about before.
Yeah, but then it's your property. You can do what you want with it. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I guess the answer is if you would like to use it, same as you might not want to alter the stock if it's standard, but you probably would if you're going to use it.
If you're going to use it, especially if you are tall or short, you're going to need to.
Only you can make that call.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.